Hi, my name is Patrick, and for this project, I decided to focus on community policing and whether or not utilizing this can affect terrorism and possibly even prevent it. But in order to do this first, I think we need to go back to the roots of community policing. And this can be traced back to about 50 years ago in the early 60s when the idea of community policing came about. But departments didn't really shift to community policing until about 1994, and they were going from a traditional policing. And a lot of people liked that because traditional policing was more punishment based, where the police were reactive and they just did what they thought was best, and they didn't really have any say. The people didn't have any say as to what was done. And with community policing, the police departments collaborate, whether that's with schools or churches or whatever it might be. The police departments are working with them to identify problems that are within one community, and they work together to see what the best course of action is to solve those problems. And traditional policing wasn't like that. So a lot of people were happy when this shift came. And unfortunately, after 9/11, the community policing well, I guess not unfortunately, but the community policing really, really gained steam after that because a lot of people felt unsafe after that. They felt like they weren't protected, and community policing has changed a lot of that. And now people really do like the community policing model. And when we were doing research earlier this semester, I actually saw something that was really interesting because it said a police chief wouldn't want to be caught dead without using the community policing model within his department. So obviously, the American people are in favor of this type of policing. And like I said, it can be used to prevent terrorism because, according to the National Institute of Justice, the number one way that we can prevent terrorism is just by looking at the signs of terrorism and being able to report that. And by using community policing, there's trust built within the communities. So the people that see this stuff feel like they're able to report it. And this wasn't always the case with traditional policing because they thought that the police were authoritarians and they didn't feel comfortable with this. So that shift was really big. I also found it interesting because the National Institute of Justice said that the trust is the single biggest factor, but there are also many, many different ways that community policing can be used to prevent future terrorist attacks because now, before 9/11, there was not a whole lot of collaboration with anybody. People just kind of did their own things. The FBI wasn't really collaborating with the local departments and vice versa. They were just kind of two separate entities. And now the Justice Department says that they're working together. So if something were to happen, they would be on the same page. And according to the National Institute of Justice, community policing is good if something were to happen, which is inevitable because something is always going to happen. And once that happens, community policing is the best because it might not have been prevented, but the community policing system is there to help community heal and move forward after a bad attack. And while obviously the goal is always to have a terrorist attack not happen, it's inevitable that it's going to happen eventually. And like I said, with community policing, they're there to help move forward and help heal the community. So a lot of people do like that. It also is important to mention that the connections made within cities are monumentally important when it comes to preventing terrorist attacks because with this, police are able to identify those who are having thoughts that they want to carry out an attack, or they're able to identify those with extremist ideologies, or they're just able to identify those who pose a threat of violence to other people or facilities. And this could be a group, it could be an individual thing, but with the help of the community and the collaboration, the police departments are able to see who might pose a threat and who might not pose a threat. And obviously, people can still report this whether or not they believe in the community policing model, but the community policing model makes it a lot easier. And for that reason, I do believe that community policing is the best way of policing that we have. It's much better than the old school traditional policing where they didn't really collaborate with the local people, with the local governments. They just kind of did their own thing. The citizens did their own thing, and it just didn't really work out that great. Whereas now, since we've shifted to community policing, luckily there hasn't been an attack like 9/11. I wouldn't say that's necessarily 100% attributed to community policing, but obviously community policing has done its job since then because there has not been another terrorist attack like that. So I do believe that community policing does its job when it's preventing terrorism. And because of that, community policing is the best way for the American people and for the safety of the homeland.